Have you ever been customizing your weapon in Battlefield 6 and you've taken a look at this mobility stat here and wondered what in the world this actually does? Because some of the grips in the game, actually quite a few of them, decrease your mobility stat by quite a significant amount. So in this video we're going to go ahead and take a look at the mobility stat, find out what it does and what it doesn't do. And we're going to start off with a common misconception I see, and that's that people think that the mobility stat influences your movement speed. So today we're going to test mobility in Battlefield 6, and to do that we're going to start off by testing, does it affect your walking speed or your sprinting speed? And to do this we're going to take a weapon with very low mobility, PSR in this case, which has a mobility of 32, and then a weapon with high mobility, which will be an SMG with a much higher mobility, and we'll test to see if the sprinting speed and walking speeds are the same or not. So to do this, we're just going to come over here into the firing range, and what we're going to do is we're just going to simply walk from one side of the firing range to the other side. It's about 20 meters, and as we do this, we'll time how much time it takes for us to get from one wall to the other wall. So that was about 5 seconds or so. Let's also try a sprint as well to see if your sprinting speed is affected by mobility. And what we find there is that that was about 3 seconds, so we've already learned something. Sprinting is about 60% faster than walking in Battlefield 6, but now let's go ahead and switch over to an SMG, so we'll use the PW7A2. You can see that our mobility here is 72 compared to 32 that we were using before. We'll go ahead and repeat our exact same test as before, walking from one wall of the firing range to the other, and what we'll see, we get 5 seconds again. No difference there, so it does not affect, mobility does not affect walking speed. Let's go ahead and test it for sprinting speed as well, so I'm holding down shift and running from one side of the wall to the other. And once again, about 3 seconds, we can see that mobility does not affect our walking or our sprinting speed. So what does it affect? Spoiler alert, I've obviously been planning this video, so I already know what it affects, and the next test we're going to do is we're going to aim down sights and walk from one side of the firing range to the other. And first off, you can see that this is already a good bit slower than whenever we were doing either the walking or sprinting tests. And with the SMG, we got around 7-ish seconds to go from one side to the other. So let's go ahead and switch back to the sniper rifle now. And let's repeat that same thing. Let's walk from one side to the other while aiming down sights. And you can see already as we do this, it's feeling a lot slower. It's definitely going to take us quite a bit more time to get from one side of the firing range to the other side. And the final time we get there is over 10 seconds, so obviously quite a good bit slower. Not quite double the amount of time, but significantly slower. So obviously the mobility stat affects our movement speed while aiming down sights. And I was curious to check, is the mobility stat constant across weapon types? And we can actually check this very easily, because there are two base weapons at least. Well, there's probably multiple instances where base weapons have the same mobility stat, but ones that I can find, the DMR, the LMR-27, and the SOR-556 both have a base mobility of 52. So let's go ahead and try both of these. Let's repeat our test. Got a little bit over 8 seconds. Let's switch over now to the SOR and repeat that exact same test. And once again, exact same thing, we got 8 seconds. So the mobility stat is the same across weapon types. So an assault rifle with a mobility of 52 gives you the exact same ADS move speed as a DMR with a mobility of 52. So now obviously the question is, how much does the mobility stat actually affect your ADS move speed? We saw what happens between like a very high mobility and a very low mobility, but whenever you're putting on these attachments, how much can you expect to actually get a change here? So what we're going to look at here is the B36A4. So without any grip on this, we have a mobility of 50. So of course we have to establish our baseline. So let's go ahead here in the firing range and walk across with no grip attachment. So once again, our base mobility here is a mobility of 50. So walking across the room with the B36 also took a little over 8 seconds, which is a little bit weird since this mobility is lower than the mobility of 52 that we just tested, but that's okay. We'll go ahead and keep testing, see maybe we can find something out about that. Let's now go ahead and put on a grip. So one of the grips that lowers the mobility is the ribbed vertical grip here. So you can see it takes our mobility from 50 down to 46. So we're losing 4 mobility, and let's see what happens whenever we do that. And we once again got a little bit over 8 seconds, so it's the exact same. Is this bugged? Like, Am I lying to you? Does the mobility stat actually not affect the ADS speed? So let's try one more thing. Instead of this, let's go to a grip that has even worse mobility. Let's go to the 6H64 vertical. So now our mobility is down to 44, and let's test the same thing again. Once again, let's go to our red door here. Slowly walk across the room. I mean, doesn't really feel much different. Maybe it's a little bit slower than before, but it doesn't feel hugely different. And that time we got a little bit over 9 seconds, which doesn't really make any sense. So if I put on a grip that drops my mobility by 4, I get no penalty. But if I put on another one that drops my mobility by only 2 more, all of a sudden I'm getting a penalty. I was very confused about this whenever I was making this video, so I did some testing. I took not quite every weapon in the game, but I took a lot of weapons with a lot of combinations of attachments, and I was testing them just walking across this room over again and again and again, timing how long it takes me to get from one end of this room to the other. And what I found, I think, is quite interesting. All right, let's pretend we're back in school because we're busting out the scatter plot today, and I cannot afford Microsoft Excel, so instead you get the highest quality plot that LibreOffice Calc can provide. You can see here from the data that I collected that your ADS movement speed scales roughly linear with the mobility stat. From the equation on the fit line, it looks like we'd have an ADS move speed of 1 at a mobility of 0, and then we get about 30 centimeters per second additional for every point of mobility. This is a bit misleading, though, and you should never trust these statistics idiots who think that fitting a line to some data immediately means that you know what's going on, because what we're seeing here actually is not linear. If we look a little bit more closely at the plot, we'll notice that the data points are sort of grouped in steps with clearly defined intervals between them. So it appears though in reality the mobility stat is split into 6 ranges, and as long as you stay within a range, your ADS move speed won't change. You do lose about 10% ADS move speed when you move down from one step to another, so the edges of the steps appear to be located at 30, so anything less than 30 is very slow. 35 is another edge, and then 45, 55, and 65. So that actually explains what we saw earlier with the B36. When we put on the first grip, our mobility dropped from 50 to 46, but 46 is still on the same step as 50, so we get no penalty. When we moved down to 44, we saw a slowdown because we moved down to a lower step. So the important takeaway here is that as long as you don't cross a step barrier, your movement speed actually won't change at all. So if you're at 54 mobility, dropping all the way down to 46 doesn't give you any penalty. Likewise, if you're at 46 and you want to go up to 52, you get no benefit from doing that. So there's really no point on even worrying about the mobility stat if that's the case. If your mobility ends with a number that's higher than 5, and after you put on the grip, your mobility ends in a number that's lower than 5, you're going to get a penalty. In any other case, though, there's actually no change to your mobility. And the reality is, even if you do get the movement speed penalty, it appears to be about only 10% of your movement speed while ADS, so the effect really isn't all that bad anyways. Let me know what you guys think of this finding in the comment section below. I feel like it's very easy to get tied up in the numbers on the statistics page in Battlefield 6, but really at the end of the day, they might not be as impactful as you think. In future videos, I'd really like to quantify what some of these other statistics mean as well. So be sure to subscribe for more Battlefield 6 analysis like this. This channel's brand new, so any likes and subscribes are much appreciated. Thank you everyone for watching, and goodbye.